Good evening, students. So, how are you guys? Good evening, Dinyash, Jyoti, Harshita, Aman Sharma, and all of those who have logged in. So, students, today we shall be starting a new chapter. The name of the chapter is Fraud and Responsibilities of the Auditor in this regard. So, we shall be discussing in this chapter what do we mean by fraud in the context of auditing. And students, you have to remember that we have to keep in mind the ultimate objective of audit of financial statements. What was that objective? It was to express an opinion on the financial statements. So we shall be studying the concept of fraud in this context. Okay. And this whole chapter, students, is largely based upon essay 240. I am again saying essay 240. The name of this essay is The Auditor's Responsibilities relating to fraud in an audit of financial statements. Okay. So the name of chapter is also similar to the name of essay, only it has been broken. So the name of essay is The Auditor's Responsibilities Relating to Fraud in an Audit of Financial Statements. So the essay deals with the responsibilities of auditor in relation to audit of financial statements. It deals with how the auditor should deal with this situation and what are the reporting requirements and what are the reporting requirements under Companies Act 2013. So sorry, all these things are dealt with in this chapter. So is that clear? Fair enough, guys? So guys, you have heard the names of companies: Satyam Computers, Enron, Lehman Brothers. Have you heard any of these names? Yes, students, tell me. Have you heard names of these companies? Any time you have read in papers, you have browsed on internet, or you have listened to TV news? Have you heard the names of these companies? Satyam Computers, Enron, and Lehman Brothers. Yes, you are saying all of them, and Aman is saying all of them. Alok is saying directly Satyam scam. So you guys are pretty aware of the things happening around you. So that's a good thing, students. So what is common to all these three companies? Yes, guys. Do you know what was common to all these three companies? The commonality was that frauds had occurred in these companies. Huge frauds of huge proportions. So what happened in Satyam Computers? So guys, in Satyam Computers, the fake revenue was shown in the financial statements. Revenue was overstated. Sales were overstated, and these were purported to have been made to the overseas clients. And when the auditors asked for the bank statements, which were in which payments from those companies were received. The fabricated bank statements were given to the auditors. Fabricated bank statements um, of uh, of banks situated overseas were given to the auditors. Similarly, in the case of Enron, the company managed to hide substantial amount of bad debts, leading to overstatement of profits. And in case of Lehman Brothers, those people use some creative accounting and show, and they were able to show loans received as sales. Okay, so guys, these are uh, some of the propagators of fraud. These companies, frauds had occurred in these companies. So we shall first try to understand the meaning, the broad meaning of fraud. What is the meaning of fraud? So we shall try to understand it generally. Meaning of fraud. So what is fraud? So fraud, the basic element of fraud, students, you have to understand that it is intentional. It is always intentional. For fraud to happen, it should be intentional. There should be some plan. There should be a scheme of things. It should have been done deliberately. Okay. For what? For what purpose? Now comes purpose. For what purpose? To obtain an unjust or illegal advantage. So what is unjust? Unjust means which was not at the first place due to that person, due to that company. It was not just, it was not equitable. Okay. Or illegal, or what is not permitted by law. It is prohibited by law. So frauds are always intentional, and these are committed to obtain unjust or illegal advantages. Okay. These are two elements. And third element is that fraud involves use of deception. What is deception, students? What is deception? Deception, students, is derived from the word deceive. It is derived from the word deceive, to deceive. In Hindi, you can say dhokha dena, to deceive somebody, to make somebody believe that something is true when that is not. Say, if some fabricated document is given, is shown, and the other person is trying to believe uh, another person that this document is genuine, that this document is genuine. He by his conduct makes a other person believe that this is a genuine document and not a fraudulent thing. Okay. And which parties it involves? Fraud involves It may involve management. It can involve management, those charged with governance, employees, third parties. So literally anybody can be involved in fraud. Okay. So welcome Harini. You are saying you are late. So you understand guys the basic elements of fraud. Fraud is number one, fraud is always intentional. This distinguishes fraud from a genuine bona fide error. Now, this is the difference between error and fraud. So you have already learned that misstatements in financial statements can arise either from errors or from fraud or both. So, okay. So what distinguishes an error, a bona fide mistake from fraud? Fraud is always intentional. It is done with some plan in mind to achieve some unjust or illegal advantage, which was not due to that person at the first instance. Okay, that person might be an employee, that person might be a company or a third party. Okay, and it always involves use of deception. It always involves use of deception. Deception means to deceive somebody, to make somebody believe that something is true when it is not. And it can be committed by management, those charged with governance, employees, third parties. So the list is fairly long enough and all encompassing. It virtually includes everybody. Okay. So elements of fraud are clear to you, students. Elements of fraud are clear to you. Now we see what is there in your module. So what is fraud? An intentional act by one or more individuals. Again, it is an intentional act. Okay, by one or more individuals. One person might be involved or more than one person might be involved. And among management and those charged with governance. Sneha, you are asking what is meaning of TCW? It was those charged with governance, the people who are responsible for running the governance of the company. Okay, employees or third parties involving the use of deception. This I have already explained to you. To obtain what? To obtain an unjust or illegal advantage. Illegal which is not permitted by law, unjust which was not due to him, which was not due to that person at first instance. Okay. So guys, you have also to understand that fraud is a legal concept. Normally, the auditor doesn't determine whether fraud has occurred or not. He does not identify the legal thing of it. So whether fraud has occurred legally, it is for investigators and ultimately for courts to decide. But for the purpose of auditing, the auditor is concerned whether fraud causes a misstatement in the financial statements. Because if due to ultimately what was the objective of the auditor? Chapter 1 essay 200. Objective of the auditor, guys, was to express an opinion on the financial statements. Wasn't that? So anything which adverse affectly the financial statements or which causes the financial statements to be materially misstated, obviously the auditor would be concerned with that. Say if the revenue is overstated, if the sales are overstated, then it is a misstatement. Now if it is due to fraud and these misstatements are material, obviously the auditor is concerned with that. So as far as auditor is concerned, he is concerned with a fraud that causes a material misstatement in the financial statements. He is concerned with only this aspect. Fraud is a broad legal concept, Varsha. This means ultimately occurrence of fraud, its modus operandi, how it was conducted, and because fraud is an also offense under Indian Penal Code. Okay, so there is a separate punishment for it, for committing frauds. So it is for the investigating authorities and ultimately for the courts to decide the contours of fraud. Okay. So two types of intentional misstatements are relevant to the auditor. Now in this context, there are two types of misstatements. We understand that auditor is concerned if material misstatements are happening. Now frauds can cause two types of material misstatements. These can be due to two reasons. Okay. One is from fraudulent financial reporting and another is from misappropriation of assets. Now we shall be studying both these one by one. What do we understand by misstatements resulting from fraudulent financial reporting, and what is a misstatement resulting from misappropriation of assets? Okay. So again, characteristics of fraud we had already discussed. Fraud is intentional. Fraud, second thing is fraud is a broad legal concept. I have already explained to you. So fraud can occur due to two broad types. These are two broad categories. What are these categories? Category one is fraudulent financial reporting. That financial reporting which is done, financial statements which are being prepared, these have been prepared fraudulently. Like say revenue has been overstated fraudulently by management. Higher people in management are involved in fraudulently booking sales. Okay. Or say if profits are being lowered artificially by booking bogus expenses, by booking fake expenses, sorry, then it is also a case of fraudulent financial reporting. Okay. And second thing is misappropriation of assets. Now assets can be anything, like physical assets, like stocks, like scrap, okay, like cash. So these can be misappropriated. Misappropriated means taken away. That asset, that thing which was supposed to be present, which was supposed to be exist in the it does not exist because it has been taken away. It has been misappropriated. Okay. So misappropriation of assets consists of misappropriation of goods and defalcation of cash. So defalcation is another name of taking away, embezzling, theft. Okay. So students, when fraud occurs, it might be due to fraudulent financial reporting, or it might be due to misappropriation of assets. Okay, so it involves three factors. What are those three factors? We shall be now considering these three factors. 1, 2, and third is on the next page. Now, one factor is incentive or pressure to commit fraudulent financial reporting. So this is incentive or pressure. So what does it mean? So students, like, for example, it might so happen that management is under pressure to meet some unrealistic targets. Okay, or say they have they want to avail some loan from banks and they want to show more revenue, more sales, and consequently more profits. They are showing more sales and more profit just for the sake of taking more credit facilities, taking more loans from banks. So what could be the reason behind it? The reason behind it is there is some incentive or pressure. Pressure might be due to higher ups in the management or due to market conditions. Okay, or some earning target fixed. And second is a perceived opportunity to commit fraud. Say we understand, students, that there is a control system in every organization to carry on its operations effectively, isn't it? There is a control system. So it may so happen that a person in authority may feel that some opportunity has come in his way, that he can override those controls, that he can bypass those controls. And even by bypassing those controls, he will not be caught. से अगर चोर चोरी करना चाहे और उसको पता हो कि वो पकड़ा नहीं जाएगा, तो उसके और हौसले उसके बढ़ जाते हैं. So you can understand it in that way, in that simple way. So a perceived opportunity to commit fraud. Okay. That controls can be overridden because such individual is in a position of trust or has knowledge of some specific deficiencies in internal control, which leads him to believe that he will not be caught. Okay. And third is individuals may be able to rationalize committing a fraudulent act. Now, what does this mean? This means that that there is habit of some individuals to their such attitude to justify whatever they are doing. वो तो कहेंगे साहब ऐसा ही होता है. Attitude of rationalization. That they some persons may do not have any set of ethical values, and they always consider and this attitude is ingrained in them, okay, of committing dishonest acts. So they would always find an opportunity to commit some fraud, and they would also try to justify it. Somehow they would give some reason, they would justify it. हमारा काम कैसे चलेगा साहब? So these kind of things, attitude of rationalization. So is that clear? So there are three factors, students. Number one is incentive or pressure. So three factors you have to remember as such: incentives or pressure to commit fraud. Number two, perceived opportunities, that controls can be overridden, that person concerned, he is in a position of trust or knowledge, and he knows that by committing fraud he will not be caught. Okay. And third is attitude of rationalization, that some people have this ingrained habit of committing unethical and dishonest acts, and they would always have a tendency to rationalize those things. They would always have a tendency to justify those things. Okay. So these are the factors. So fraudulent financial reporting, guys, this involves three things. Fraudulent financial reporting, earlier we were considering what are the reasons behind fraud, why persons commit fraud. You can understand generally. So whether it was due to financial reporting or it may be due to misappropriation of assets. We were going behind the general reasons of committing fraud. What were these, guys? These were incentive or pressure. Number two was perceived opportunity, and number three was attitude of rationalization. And now we come to the types of fraudulent financial reporting. Yes, Harini, governance, those charged with governance means those who are responsible for running the company, for running the affairs of the company, who have a responsibility in this regard. So fraudulent financial reporting means manipulation, falsification, misrepresentation, intentional omission, and intentional misapplication of accounting principles. Now we shall go one by one. Manipulation of accounts. So how accounts are manipulated? Manipulation of accounts. How accounts are manipulated? Okay. So because if accounts are manipulated, students, you would see that it would always involve higher ups in the management. Management itself will be involved. Management itself will be involved in manipulation of the accounts, because say if the management is overstating the revenue, then it cannot be without the knowledge of senior persons in the management. Okay. So they would plan the whole things deliberately, and all things would be tried to be taken care of by them so that they are not caught. Okay. So detection of manipulation of accounts with a view to presenting a false state of affairs is a task requiring great tact, because management personnel in higher management cadre are associated with this type of fraud, and therefore that is perpetrated in a methodical ways, very systematically. So, Muhammad Abid Vora, whistleblower complaints, we shall all be studying it. So keep some patience. So this type of fraud is generally committed to avoid. Now, purpose. What is the purpose of manipulation of accounts? These are purpose. What are purpose of manipulation of accounts? To avoid incidence of income tax or other taxes. Say they might want to lower their tax liability, so they might be booking fake expenses. Now it is a one case of lowering your tax liability if you book fake expenses, or you some company is involved in understating its revenues. Now they are booking sales, they are making sales outside their books, so the actual sales are not being recorded. Actual sales are higher, but what is shown in the books is lower. Other sales might be conducted in cash. Okay, so to avoid, so what would happen? Say if by artificially suppressing the sales, the company would be obviously lowering its profits, because had it shown that amount of sales, then profits would have increased. Okay. So, and B is for declaring a dividend when there are insufficient profits. What does this mean? This states that there might be insufficient profits actually. Actually, the company is generating lower profits, but just for the sake of declaring dividend, they are showing the profits, because so that value of their share doesn't come down when the results are declared. So it is also a way of manipulation of accounts. Okay, understood, guys? To withhold declaration of dividend even when there is adequate profit. So this can reverse of it can also be true. Actually, there is profit in the company, but it doesn't want to declare dividend. Why? Because it wants some persons to acquire shares at a lower value, so that persons can acquire shares at a lower value, and after some period, after few years, when the profits are shown, then share prices would rise astronomically. Okay, so in this way they would be enriching those persons. Okay, for receiving higher remuneration where managerial remuneration is payable by reference to profits. Say in case of a certain class of companies, managerial remuneration is payable as a percentage of profits. So when the managerial remuneration is payable as a percentage of profits, so profits may be artificially boosted to get higher remuneration. So these are the broadly some purpose, some objectives why accounts are manipulated. Okay, guys. So is that clear? So I have already told you how these things can be done. There are numerous ways of committing this type of fraud. Okay. Some of the methods are given below. Now, Santosh, you are asking me to again explain point C with, I have already explained with example. Say the company, there is some company and there are profits in the company. So if they show the profits, then they might have to declare dividend to the shareholders, but they do not want to declare the dividend now. They want to postpone it to a future period, to say after 3-4 years. So when dividend is not declared, ultimately the value, the overall perception in the market of the company goes down, that it is not making profits. Okay, and so its value of the shares will not move, will not go high, but actually the company is generating profits. So by this way they might help some their known persons to some close persons to buy shares at lower prices, because internally they have inside information. They know that share prices are going to be to increase in, say, after 1 or 2 years because of the profits. So this is also a modus operandi. Is it clear to you, Santosh? So there are numerous ways of committing this type of fraud. Some of the methods are inflating or suppressing purchases and expenses. Say if some company inflates the purchases and expenses, what would happen? The purchases are increased or expenses are increased, what would happen? Profits would decrease. Okay, and if these are suppressed, purchases and expenses are suppressed, profits will be boosted. Okay. And second point is inflating or suppressing sales and other items of income. This we have already discussed. Say if a company inflates the sales, so profits would be boosted. If suppresses the sales, profits would be reduced. Similar with the items of income. Similarly, inflating or deflating value of inventory, closing inventory. Say if my inventories are valued at, valuation is made low, what is actual or what is in accordance with the recognized accounting principles. So the company would be inflating or deflating the profits. If it increases value of inventory, then profits would be increased. If it decreases, then profits would be decreased. Okay. Failing to adjust outstanding liabilities or prepaid expenses. Okay, so liabilities which are there to pay. Okay, and these are not adjusted. These are not adjusted. Prepaid expenses are not adjusted. Some item is shown as prepaid expenses, but expense has been actually incurred. It was shown as prepaid expenses, but in subsequent period, say expense is not booked. So it continues to be shown as prepaid expense. So obviously, when expense is not booked, profits would be boosted. Charging items of capital expenditure or revenue, or by capitalizing revenue expenses. So vice versa. This you know fairly well. Say if some machinery is wrongly value of some machinery is wrongly debited in machinery repair account. So what would happen? Machinery repair account would increase, expenses would increase, and profits would be reduced. So similar, or if expenses item are capitalized, the nature of such expenses is that these are in the nature of expenditure, these are in nature of revenue, but these are capitalized. Say these are put in the machinery account, then what would happen? Then profits would be increased, profits would be boosted. So is that clear to you guys? Now Saurabh Sagar, you are asking to explain again the last point of manipulation of account. Now this was higher remuneration. Say you would be reading in Companies Act that in case of certain class of companies, managerial remuneration, the managerial salary or remuneration is payable with reference to profits as a percentage of profits. So obviously those people would be interested in drawing higher salary, higher remuneration, because, and if it is payable as a percentage of profits, if the profits are more, salary would be more. So simple. Is that clear to you, Saurabh Sagar? So misrepresentation, and another thing is misrepresentation or intentional omission from the financial statements of events, transactions, or other significant information. Like this, you can understand as being outside the books. Say if something has not been recorded in the books, there is misrepresentation or intentional omission. This has not been recorded, or this has been intentionally omitted. Okay. So this might be some relate to some event, transactions, or something, some disclosures. So intentional misapplication of accounting principles relating to amounts, classification, or disclosures. So again, the same thing. The company intentionally misapplies accounting principles. So what the accounting, some accounting principle states, it intentionally misapplies it. Okay. To the purpose is to deliberately present a misleading picture, to either to artificially boost the profits or lower the profits, or to inflate the sales or suppress the revenue. Okay. So you understand, guys, all these things? Now, fraudulent financial reporting often involves management override of controls that otherwise they may appear to be operating effectively. So what does it mean? It means that on the face of it, लगेगा कि आपको कि सारा सिस्टम ठीक है, इसका इंटरनल कंट्रोल भी बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है, कंपनी में प्रॉपर सिस्टम है, लेकिन मैनेजमेंट is in a position of overriding of controls. The management, some people in the management, they are in a position to bypass the control. Okay, so on paper, it might seem that controls are operating effectively, but in fact, these have been bypassed. These have been overridden. Okay. So how this can be done? This can be done by some examples are given, like recording fictitious journal entries, particularly close to the end of accounting period. Okay, changing judgments, omitting, advancing or delaying recognition in the financial statements of that have occurred during the period. कि आपने कोई चीज रिपोर्ट ही नहीं की, आपने कोई चीज रिपोर्ट ही नहीं की. Guys, you would be remembering in case of fraud of a leading public sector bank some time ago, some years ago, there was there were some transactions, some liabilities devolved upon the bank which were outside the books because some technological system was not integrated with the systems of the bank. Okay, so it is just an omission, So when something is not on paper, when it has been omitted, then how this is a very manipulative, clever way of conducting frauds. So engaging in complex transactions that are structured to misrepresent the financial position. So if like we have already discussed, whenever there are complex transactions are happening, so obviously these there might be chance, there might be probability of misrepresenting financial position of the company. So these kind of factors are there. So is it clear, guys? Fraudulent financial reporting. This subtopic is clear to you? Fraudulent financial reporting. So what is fraudulent? There we had discussed three things. First of all, remember three things we had discussed. Three reasons behind fraud. What were those three reasons? These three reasons were incentive or pressure to commit fraud. There might be some incentive, some benefit, some reward, or there might be pressure. Okay. And second thing was perceived opportunities. Perceived opportunity, that a person has got an opportunity and he knows that he can easily override the controls. He is in such a position that he is unlikely to be caught. Okay, so or he has knowledge of the system in such a manner that he knows that he is unlikely to be caught. Okay, and third is rationalization. When you try to rationalize your unjust or unethical or dishonest acts. So Dinyash, you are asking what is meaning of fictitious journal entries? Fictitious journal entries, Dinyash, it means that these are entries which have not happened. So these are fictitious entries in journal. Okay, like say some sale return entries at the end of the year. Okay, so no bank is involved. You and sale account and parties account are involved. So these type of things. Actually, these may not happen, but you are making fictitious entries. Okay. Now we come to guys second point. What is we had understood that fraud can occur either through fraudulent financial reporting or through misappropriation of assets. Was that clear? So we have already understood what do we mean by fraudulent financial reporting. We have also understood that fraudulent financial reporting normally involves higher management cadre, because it is with their connivance. It is with their connivance that these kind of frauds are conducted. Okay. So misappropriation of assets. It involves theft of an entity's assets. So we have already learned that misappropriation means theft, taking away. So obviously it belongs to assets. So these assets might be certain moving assets like stock items, or say you can say petty scrap, or it can be cash. So it is often perpetrated by employees. These are committed normally by whom? These are perpetrated by whom? By employees in relatively small and immaterial amounts. Say guys, आप वो building भी एक asset है, you would say building would be is also an asset. So building तो कोई उठा के लेके नहीं जाएगा. Plant and machinery is also an asset. वो भी कोई उठा के नहीं लेके जाएगा. So क्या उठा के ले जाएगा assets में? The things which can be stolen in small quantities on a regular basis. थोड़ा थोड़ा करके small quantities में निकालना. Okay. Generally it involves such thing, but it can also involve management who may have some plan. They might disguise it. How they are conducting it, they might conceal it. Okay. So misappropriation can be accomplished in a variety of ways. How? Number one, embezzling receipts. Embezzling means chori karna, stealing, take away. Embezzling, theft. Embezzling means theft. And this is normal. This word is usually used in relation to cash. Embezzle. So embezzling receipts. Cash receipts आई कैशियर के पास, उसने शो ही नहीं किया, एम्बेजल कर ली. ओके. Harini, you are asking what is the meaning of perpetrated? Perpetrated means committing. उस कार्य को करना, उस काम को करना. Okay. So this is normally used in generally negative sense, that fraud was perpetrated by that employee, or a crime was perpetrated by some person. Okay, so it is normally used in negative sense. So stealing physical assets, like stealing scrap, okay, or say colluding with a competitor by disclosing technological data in return for payment. Some employee colludes. Okay. Causing an entity to pay for goods and services not received. Now this is important. Say if some goods have not been received by a company. Okay. And some 3-4 people, employees who are concerned with who are part of the internal control system, these people collude. Okay. These people collude. So what would happen? What would happen? They would commit a fraud. Say कोई माल, कोई गुड्स कंपनी में आया नहीं, स्टॉक की आइटम आई नहीं, उसकी बुक से पेमेंट भी हो गई उस पार्टी को. सो दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ पेइंग फॉर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज नॉट रिसीव्ड, और इफ some services were purported to have been received by the company, but these services were never received. और बिल उसका पास होके करवा के उसको अकाउंट सेक्शन से भी मिल गए और मैनेजर भी मिल गया, 2-3 लोग मिल गए और अकाउंट सेक्शन से बिल पास होके पेमेंट भी हो गई, बट एक्चुअली those goods or services were never received. Okay. So, or kickbacks paid by vendors to the entities purchasing agents in return for inflating prices, or kickbacks you understand kickbacks guys, कि कंपनी जिनको माल बेच रही है उसके वेंडर्स जो है किसी कंपनी के एम्प्लॉइज के साथ या एजेंट को मिल जाए, एजेंट के साथ मिल जाए और प्राइस इन्फ्लेट करा लें, 100 रुपए की चीज जो है वो 200 रुपए की बिलिंग हो गई, ठीक है। उसके बीच में से उन्होंने किकबैक्स ले लिए, एजेंट्स ने भी और वेंडर्स ने भी। ओके, पेमेंट टू फिक्टिशियस एम्प्लॉइज और से wages are paid to employees who are fictitious, who are dummy workers, से पेरोल्स में डमी वर्कर्स डाल दिए और उनको फिक्टिशियस पेमेंट कर दी। यूजिंग एन एंटिटीज एसेट्स फॉर पर्सनल यूज, जो कंपनी की एसेट्स हैं उसको पर्सनल यूज किया, तो इट इज ऑल्सो ए टाइप ऑफ मिसएप्रोप्रिएशन ऑफ एसेट्स, because the assets of a company, assets of an organization, assets of an entity are meant to be used by whom? These are supposed to be used by company, for the company, for its purpose, but these might be used for some personal use. Okay, now Jyoti, you are asking fraud is 2-time misappropriation of assets or second thing. Now fraud is of 2 types, Jyoti. One is due to fraudulent financial reporting and another is due to misappropriation of assets. Okay, and misappropriation of assets is again divided into 2 things. One is misappropriation of goods and another is defalcation of cash. Cash is dealt separately. Okay, clear Jyoti? Let me know Jyoti, is that clear to you? Now this was the chart, you can understand it from here. Misappropriation of assets, misappropriation of goods and defalcation of cash. Fraud is due to fraudulent financial reporting and misappropriation of assets, and misappropriation of assets is due to misappropriation of goods and defalcation of cash. Clear Jyoti? Yes, you are saying it's clear now. So misappropriation of assets is often accompanied by false or misleading records or documents in order to conceal the fact that assets are missing or have been pledged without proper authorization. Okay, so obviously when something is missing, then you would tend to show on records that it is present there, that it exists there. So obviously it would be accompanied by some false or fictitious or misleading records. Okay. Now we come to misappropriation of goods. Now what is misappropriation of goods? Now fraud in the form of misappropriation of goods is still more difficult to detect. Why? Because it is normally perpetrated in small quantities. So जो चीज थोड़ा थोड़ा हो रहा है वो पता नहीं चलता ना। से अगर कोई एम्प्लॉइज गुड्स को मिसअप्रोप्रिएट कर रहे हैं इन स्मॉल क्वांटिटीज, सो इट डजंट गेट हाईलाइटेड. ओके, Is that clear? So apart from various requirements of record keeping about the physical quantities and their periodic checks, there must be rules for allowing persons inside the area where goods are kept. Obviously, if you want to stop this, then you have to frame such rules. Your internal control has to be such that that the goods are kept in safe custody. Okay, so if these goods are valuable, these are kept in safe custody. So, like students, in case of valuable goods, like when you go to a jewelry showroom, you would be seeing the kind of internal control system they are having, they are at place. So the owners, the management is sitting in some metropolitan cities, but it is running jewelry business by means of showrooms all over the country. Okay, so how they are doing it? Because there are very tight internal controls. Because gold or diamonds itself is a very valuable item and prone to theft. So you would be seeing presence of security guards, presence of CCTV cameras, and all these things. And there is a proper system of checking daily inventory and proper and system of billing. Okay, because सोना और डायमंड तो थोड़ा सा भी इधर उधर हो गया तो it might runs into lakhs and crores. Okay. So in addition, there should be external security arrangements like what I'm telling to you by giving you example. Okay. So this is simple that way. Just general. So therefore, it is clear that fraud deals with intentional misrepresentation, but errors refers to unintentional mistakes in financial information. So whatever is intentional, students, you have to understand it is very hard to detect, because that is why frauds are hard to detect, because these are properly planned. कोई फ्रॉड करके उसको ऐसे उसके लूज एंड छोड़ नहीं देगा एम्प्लॉय. He would make the things appear in such way that everything is hunky and dory, everything is perfect. Okay, so therefore intentional errors are most difficult to detect. So therefore auditors devote greater attention to this type, because if intentional errors are discovered, then simpler errors would be automatically discovered. Okay, so if some intentional mistakes, intentional errors are discovered, then simpler things obviously would fall in the way. Okay. Now we come to second part, that is defalcation of cash. How cash is defalcated? How it is done? So by inflating cash payments, say I increase cash payments. If some person is responsible for making cash payments in the factory, he artificially increases those cash payments, like payment of wages to dummy workers. Say some dummy workers are there in payrolls. So if there is not proper control, then fictitious payments can be made. 5 7 10 नाम डाल दिए और उनसे वॉचर साइन करा के उनको वॉचर साइन करके इनिशियल करके और उसको पेमेंट कर दी, थोड़ी थोड़ी पेमेंट निकाल ली. सो दीज आर एग्जांपल्स. मेकिंग पेमेंट्स अगेंस्ट fictitious vouchers, making payments against voucher where amounts have been inflated or where cash payments are there. So voucher of 5,000, actual expenses 5,000, payment is made of 15,000. Okay. Manipulating total of wage rolls by including worker names of dummy workers. So these kind of things. Inflating cash payments. It means that payments which were supposed to be made are being made at a higher amount than what actually it is. Okay, so by this way, you are inflating cash payments, and the cash payments which are inflated, this cash is siphoned off. This cash is being put in the pockets of employees, in the pockets of those persons who are committing the fraud. Clear, guys? Yes. And by suppressing cash receipts. Now, above first was first subtopic was inflating cash payments. Now, second subtopic is suppressing cash receipts. That there are cash receipts, but you suppress it. You artificially suppress it. You do not show it, or you either defer it. So how are cash receipts deferred? कैश आ गया, ओके, किसी के पास कैशियर के पास कैश आ गया, लेकिन उसने शो नहीं किया कि मेरे पास कैश आया. तो इन दिस वे ही इज डेफरिंग इट. ओके, से उसने 2 महीने कैश यूज कर लिया और फिर उसने कहा कि अब 2 महीने बाद कैश आया. 2 महीने में वो यूज कर गया उस कैश को, और डेफरमेंट हो गई, सप्रेशन हो गई. ओके, सप्रेसिंग कैश रिसीट्स. 2 महीने में उसका काम चल गया, फिर कहीं और से पैसा आ गया, तो उसने वो जो 2 महीने वाला यूज किया है वो बता दिया कि ये अब रिसीव हुआ है. तो इस टाइप का मेथड का नाम होता है टीमिंग एंड लीडिंग. टीमिंग एंड लीडिंग. मेथड ऑफ सप्रेसिंग कैश रिसीट, टीमिंग एंड लीडिंग. लाइक अमाउंट, जो मैंने आपको एग्जांपल अभी हिंदी में समझाया, इसी लाइंस पे है ये, कि अमाउंट रिसीव्ड फ्रॉम ए कस्टमर बीइंग मिसअप्रोप्रिएटेड. एक कस्टमर से कैश रिसीव हुआ, उसको कैशियर ने अपने पास रख लिया, एंड टू प्रिवेंट इट्स डिटेक्शन द मनी रिसीव्ड फ्रॉम another customer subsequently being credited to the account of customer who has paid earlier. और 15 दिन बाद किसी और से भी कैश आ गया, वो वाला कैश उसके अकाउंट में क्रेडिट कर दिया पहले वाले के. इस तरह से इस प्रोसेस को वो रिपीट करता है और एक चेन बन जाती है. दिस प्रोसेस इज नोन एज टीमिंग एंड लीडिंग. तो ये प्रोसेस कब पकड़ा जाएगा? जबकि ये when this chain will be broken, when this chain will be broken, से कोई उसके पास कहीं से भी कैश नहीं आ रहा, तो कहीं ना कहीं पे तो आके this chain will stop, this chain will break, then he will be caught. Now कितना पीरियड होगा? This might go on for 1 year or 2 year. Meanwhile हो सकता है वो जॉब छोड़ के ही चला जाए, बाद में पता चले कि वो तो ऐसे फ्रॉड हो गया. ओके, सो यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस मेथड गाइस, टीमिंग एंड लीडिंग. इट इज ए मेथड ऑफ सप्रेसिंग, रिड्यूसिंग, दबाने का of what? Cash receipts. Okay, it is a method of suppressing, reducing, deferring cash receipts. Is that clear? And another thing is adjusting unauthorized or fictitious rebates to customer accounts. Say customer is not authorized for some rebates or discounts. Okay, तो उसमें अकाउंट उसको रिबेट दिखा दिया और अमाउंट मिसअप्रोप्रिएट कर लिया. ओके, और से देयर माइट बी सम स्मॉल वैल्यू डेट्स. किसी छोटे छोटे कस्टमर से आपको 5,000 लेने हैं, 7,000 लेने हैं, और उसको बोल दिया कि कस्टमर से पैसा आ चुका है, लेकिन मालिक को ये इंफॉर्मेशन है, ऑनर को मालूम नहीं, उसको ये इंफॉर्मेशन है कि ये पैसे आएंगे नहीं. उसको कहे सर ये तो पैसे डूब गए. ठीक है, वो छोटे छोटे अमाउंट हैं तो वो भी जो है ऑनर भी इतना ध्यान नहीं रख रहा, लेकिन उसने क्या किया, कस्टमर से पैसा लेके अपनी पॉकेट में डाल लिया और बुक्स में उसको राइट ऑफ कर दिया. बुक्स में क्या है, सर ये बटा खाता हो गया, डूब गए पैसे इससे. So you understand, writing off as debts in respect of such balances against which cash has already been received but has been misappropriated. Yes, Jyoti, you are writing employee does fraud, but management is not caught. So that management is responsible for that fraud. You are not clear in what you are writing. You are not clear in what you are trying to say, Jyoti. Ultimately, we would be coming to this topic. Ultimately, you have to realize, you have to recognize, you have to understand that prevention of frauds and detection of frauds is ultimately the responsibility of management. Primary responsibility is of the management. Now, this thing, guys, is very, very important in auditing. You have to understand that preparation of books of accounts is responsibility of management. Preparation of financial statements is also responsibility of management. Preparation of internal control system is also responsibility of management. Prevention of frauds and detection of frauds is also responsibility of management. It is their responsibility that they make soundproof system, that their internal control is such that frauds do not happen. So you would say, what is the responsibility of auditor? Auditor's responsibility is to see that whatever system management has developed, it is operating effectively. Whether this is not being bypassed, okay, and by doing so, by evaluating so, by applying his audit procedures, he might come across some frauds. Okay, ultimately the auditor's responsibility, again the basic funda is to express an opinion. If by doing so he obtains some information, he comes to discover some fraud, okay, then it's fine enough, because he is carrying out his audit in accordance with standards on auditing. All the procedures prescribed in standards on auditing are capable of unearthing wrongdoings. Okay, but his primary duty is not that. So we'll be shortly coming to this topic also. So not accounting for cash sales fully, this is also done, and not accounting for miscellaneous receipts like sale of scrap. Now we come to this topic, detection of fraud and error duty of an auditor. Now, this is the very, very important topic, students, and it is at the heart of this essay, at heart of this chapter. Yes, these can, Alok, you are right. These can be discovered by external confirmations. Why not? So, because at the beginning I had told you, students, that essay 240 deals with the responsibilities of auditor. It deals with the responsibilities of auditor in an audit of financial statements. So all essays, one more thing, students, you have to remember that these deal with the responsibilities of auditor in some way or another. Okay, like essay 300 dealt with responsibility of auditor in planning and audit. Now essay 315, it dealt with responsibilities of auditor in identifying and assessing risk of material misstatements. Okay, similarly, essay 240, it deals with the auditor's responsibility regarding detection of fraud and errors. What is the duty in this regard? So whatever essays you are studying, whatever essays have been pronounced by the Council of ICI, these deal with responsibilities of auditor. These deal with responsibilities of auditors in different aspects of audit in relation to the process of audit. Okay. So what does it say? Essay 240 states, like what I have told you now, generally now we'll be reading it from your module. The primary responsibility for the prevention and detection of fraud rests with management and those charged with the governance. Those people who are responsible for running the show and management, they are responsible for preventing and detecting the fraud. ऑडिटर रिस्पॉन्सिबल नहीं है. फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑडिटर की नहीं है. फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी है? मैनेजमेंट की. फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी है? मैनेजमेंट की. दिस यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. It is important that management places a strong emphasis on fraud prevention, which may reduce opportunities for fraud to take place and fraud deterrence, which could persuade individuals not to commit fraud. Because if the management makes a soundproof control system, if they divide the duties between the employees in such a way that it is difficult, not impossible, it is difficult for them to commit fraud, then obviously chances of committing the fraud would reduce, isn't it, guys? So that is why the auditor makes a in-depth study and evaluation of internal control. Now you try to link it with what we had done in chapter 4, essay 315. Clear, students? So what are the broad principles in this regard? An auditor conducting an audit in accordance with essays is responsible only for obtaining reasonable assurance that financial statements are as a whole or free from fraud or error, from material misstatements. Okay. So here it is trying to link it with essay 200. And because of the inherent limitations of audit, we already know that audit procedures are always carry inherent risk. Audit procedures, these are not always sufficient. These do not always guarantee, because these are carried on basis of sample. So it is quite possible that material misstatements might not be detected even though these are present. but the auditor has to apply those procedures. Now here, this is the beauty, that he has to apply those procedures. So by applying those procedures, there would be reasonable chance that he would be able to dig out wrongdoings. He would be able to dig out errors or frauds. But still, there can be possibility, there can be situation that if some fraud is laid out very cleverly, that he may not be able to detect it. Okay. And second thing is, the risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than risk of not detecting one resulting from error. Say if there is a misstatement which results from error. Okay, and there is a misstatement which results from fraud. So misstatement which is resulting from fraud, its chance is higher that it would not be detected by the auditor, because errors are unintentional. So they would be easy and simple to detect. Because but if something is carefully planned, carefully laid down, it involves some scheme of things, organized scheme of things, then many things would be taken care of. Many things would have been taken care of by those employees or by those involved in the management, in the higher cadre, for committing that fraud. Okay, because this is because fraud may involve sophisticated and carefully organized schemes designed to conceal, such as forgery, fabrication, जैसे मैंने कहा झूठे documents. I had given you example of Satyam. Okay, deliberate failure to record transaction or intentional misrepresentation being made to the auditor, where the auditor is misled to believe that something is true when it is not. उसका उसका जो अटेंशन है उसको आपने डाइवर्ट कर दिया या उसको किसी और ट्रैक पे ले गए ऑडिटर को. ओके, सो these are the work of very clever people. So such attempts at concealment may be even more difficult to detect when accompanied by collusion. So when whole setup is involved, when say higher ups are involved and all in the lower hierarchy are also involved, then the it is very difficult for the auditor to detect, because they may lead auditor to believe that audit evidence is persuasive when in effect it is false. They would say, sir, this is the document, ये जो आप चीज मांग रही हो सामने पड़ा तो है सर, ये देखिए ये है, लेकिन वो हो सकता है इट माइट बी फैब्रिकेटेड, इट माइट नॉट बी जेन्युइन. ओके, सो गाइज यू हैड रेड in chapter 1, I think you would be remembering that auditor is not an expert. You had read in chapter 1 that auditor is not an expert to discover genuineness of documents. Say if some document has been fabricated very very cleverly, okay, and with all the care, then the auditor may be fooled around. Okay, he may be persuaded to accept a wrong piece of information to arrive at some wrong conclusions. That piece of information, that piece of document might lead him to some wrong conclusions and ultimately consequently wrong opinions. Clear guys? So third point is, the risk of auditor not detecting a material misstatement resulting from management fraud is greater than for employee fraud. Say if the management itself is involved in fraud, if management itself is involved in fraud, then the chances that it would be detected by the auditor would be low as compared to when the fraud is committed by employees. Okay, so when the fraud is committed by the management, the risk that the auditor would not be able to detect material misstatement would be greater. Okay, because for the obvious reason that management, a higher cadre of management or those in charge of governance, they would be in a position to manipulate the things in accordance to their wills. Okay, or they might be in a position to override the controls, as we have seen in the factor relating to perceived opportunities. Okay, so but despite all things, guys, the auditor is responsible for maintaining an attitude of professional skepticism throughout the audit, considering the potential for management override of controls and recognizing the fact that audit procedures that are effective for error may not be effective in detecting fraud. Okay, so despite that, you go to chapter 1. Remember chapter 1, that auditor has always to maintain an attitude of questioning mind. He has always to remain alert to the possibilities of fraud. He has always to challenge the things, whatever the assertions are being made by the management, whatever is being represented by the management, he can challenge it. Okay, he can challenge it by correlating with the evidence. So clear, is that clear to you guys? The duty of auditor in relation to prevention and detection of errors and frauds in context of SA 240. So that is this forms crux of this chapter. This forms core of this chapter, heart of this chapter. Okay, this concept you have to clearly understand. एक बार स्टूडेंट्स आपने समझ लिया तो आपको क्रैम करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. You will never answer any question pertaining to this topic wrongly. Clear, guys? Is that clear? So let me know, drop your mail, guys. Is that clear to you? Yes. Drop your mails, students. Is the same clear to you? Now, Neha, you are asking that asset is present physically, but not in books of accounts. Is it also misappropriation? It is not a kind of misappropriation. When something is misappropriated, it means that in fact it was existing and it was misappropriated. Now it is something out of the books, that it has not been recorded. It means that it has not been recorded. It is out of the books. It is not a misappropriation per se. Yes, sir. Clear. So, Aman, you are asking it to summarize it in Hindi. So I have explained it in very simple terms. I don't think there is any need to explain it in Hindi. Even then, I'll speak a line or two. कि प्राइमरी ड्यूटी ऑडिटर की फ्रॉड डिटेक्ट करने की नहीं है। प्राइमरी ड्यूटी किसकी है? प्राइमरी ड्यूटी मैनेजमेंट की है। मैनेजमेंट रिस्पॉन्सिबल है फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स की प्रिपरेशन के लिए, मैनेजमेंट रिस्पॉन्सिबल है साउंड इंटरनल कंट्रोल सिस्टम के लिए, और प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी प्रिवेंशन ऑफ फ्रॉड की किसकी है? मैनेजमेंट की है। डिटेक्शन की भी किसकी है? मैनेजमेंट की है। ऑडिटर कम्स आफ्टरवर्ड्स, ऑडिटर बाद में आता है पिक्चर में। ओके, so Swati, you are saying, can you please summarize point number 2? Point number 2 is that Swati, there are two types of misstatements. One statement, misstatement is arising due to fraud. Another misstatement is arising due to error. Now, which misstatement would auditor easily detect? Tell me. This is the whole purpose of this point number 2. Which misstatement the auditor would easily detect? Whether misstatement which was caused due to error or whether misstatement which was caused due to fraud. Obviously, he would easily detect misstatement caused due to error because it was unintentional. So it states that chances of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher. That auditor is not able to dig out the material misstatement from fraud, its chances are higher than what is there in respect of misstatement arising from errors. Is that clear to you, Swati? Is that clear to you, Swati M? Yes, please let me know. Is that clear? Is the point number 2 clear? So guys, we are going to take a short break here for 10 minutes. So break for 10 minutes. Yes, welcome back, guys. So, Murtaza Ali, you are asking what are steps to be taken by an auditor if fraud is detected? We will be discussing those steps, Murtaza, in our next lecture. In the second part of this chapter, we shall be discussing all those things. Whistle blowing भी मोहम्मदाबाद वोरा उसी में आएगा. And collusion, Aditi Bhatti, you are asking collusion. Collusion means दो या उससे ज्यादा लोगों को आपस में मिल जाना, मिल के कुछ प्लान कर लेना और किसी चीज को बाईपास कर लेना. कॉल्यूड. ओके. कॉल्यूजन इज मेड फ्रॉम कॉल्यूड. कॉल्यूड मतलब मिल जाना, मिली भगत. मिली भगत. You can understand in Hindi. So there is one example given. While auditing some company, the auditor was told by Mr. Mahesh, CEO of the company, that he would be responsible for frauds and errors if any occurring in books of accounts. Now tell me, guys, whether this view is correct, whether view of Mr. Mahesh is correct. Do not read the material which is below the question. Just try to make your assessment. Whether view of Mahesh is correct. He is asking the auditor that he would be responsible for frauds and errors if any occurring in the books of accounts. कि मैंने तो आपको बुक्स दे दी हैं ऑडिट करने के लिए, अब आप जिम्मेवार हो फ्रॉड और एरर के. This is the statement of Mr. Mahesh. Is the auditor responsible? Yes, Jyoti has replied. Answer is no. How it is no? Because the auditor is only, again, SA 200 is responsible for obtaining a reasonable assurance that financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or errors. There are inherent limitations in audit. Okay. So the primary responsibility of detection of frauds is of management. Okay. So all these things. So such kind of things. Now, second is, after completion of statutory audit of some company, a fraud was detected at the office of the auditee. The management alleged that there is a failure on the part of auditor to detect fraud, and that auditor would be responsible for not detecting fraud of the company. Now, is this view correct? Yes. Is this view correct? Audit complete हो गया किसी कंपनी का, ऑडिट के बाद फ्रॉड निकला, तो क्या ये ऑडिटर का फेलियर है? द मैनेजमेंट alleges that it is failure on the part of the auditor. Now, so स्टूडेंट्स, ऐसे तो आप कहेंगे कि फ्रॉड तो हो सकता है, ऑडिटर ने ऑडिट किया, he is not responsible. He is not responsible because primary responsibility तो मैनेजमेंट की है. But this view is also not sound, friends. You have to understand, whenever fraud is discovered after an audit has been completed, after audit report has been issued, and there is an allegation that auditor has not performed his duties well, his duties diligently, with due professional care and skill. So he would have to demonstrate. He would have to demonstrate that yes, I have carried out the audit in accordance with standards on auditing, that I have performed these procedures. You are saying that fraud has occurred in this area, but I have performed these procedures in this area. And these are the very procedures which were required to be performed by me in accordance with standards on auditing. And there was nothing else which has come to my notice which arose my suspicion that a fraud exists. Okay, so he would have to demonstrate, he would have to show the records how the audit was planned and what procedures were carried out by him. It is only then he can escape from his liability. Otherwise, students, if he is not able to demonstrate, if he is not able to show that necessary procedures were performed to obtain audit evidence, that audit was carried out in accordance with the professional standards, in accordance with the standards on auditing, then he would be in trouble. Then he would be in trouble. So it is not as simple as you think. There is not a one-liner here that no, but he has to demonstrate. So that is how now you correlate it with chapter 3. Now tell me guys, what does this thing highlight? If auditor has to demonstrate that audit was conducted in accordance with standards on auditing and he has performed the necessary audit procedure, which thing is most important? Which thing is most important? वो उसको क्या चीज बचाएगी? Tell me the name of that term. क्या चीज ऑडिटर को बचाएगी? What thing would save the skin of the auditor? How he will be able to demonstrate that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing. And he has applied all those procedures which were necessary for performing the audit in accordance with the standards on auditing. Therefore, there is no negligence on his part. Therefore, there is no failure on his part. How he will demonstrate? What is the name of that term? Yes, now guys, try to relate to chapter 3. I've given you clue, I've given you hint. ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स आपको समझना है, ऐसे अंडरस्टैंड करना है. Only then you will be able to grasp the things in auditing. Yes, few are writing correctly, but some are off the mark. So what is the correct name of the term? Name of the term is audit documentation. So well done, all of those who are writing it correctly. All of you who are writing it correctly. Many of you have written correctly. Audit documentation. He would have to show his working papers. He have to show on record. क्या documents से आपने कैसे किया? How you have planned, how you arrived at that conclusion, how you arrived at the risk assessment, how you identified the risk, and finally, how you arrived at the opinion. And what procedures were performed in the area in which fraud is discovered. Did the auditor perform some procedure? And whether this was the procedure required to be performed by the auditor in accordance with standard on auditing. So, Aman, Murtaza, you are writing audit evidence. Audit evidence is part of audit documentation. खाली audit evidence से तो काम नहीं हो जाएगा. Audit documentation is all encompassing. It includes all the detail of how the audit was planned, how the risk was identified, what procedures were performed, and what audit evidence was obtained, and how that audit evidence was evaluated, and how opinion was formed. If he is not able to show the required documentation, then how he would escape from his liabilities? Guys, tell me. Now this is the $1 million question. So the correct answer is audit documentation. And how you are saying, Alok Shivani, audit evidence and audit report. Audit report तो final outcome ही है उसका. Audit process का what is the final outcome? Final outcome is audit report. So how audit report has been given? This would be proved by what thing? This would be proved by the record of those procedures, record of which is known as audit documentation, audit working papers. So this is all which is written here. So this para is important. The question of whether the auditor has adhered to the basic principles governing an audit is determined by the adequacy of procedures undertaken in the circumstances and suitability of the report based upon these procedures. Okay, he would have to demonstrate, he would have to show the liability of the auditor for failure to detect fraud exists only. It exists only when such failure is clearly due to not exercising reasonable care and skill. What I was trying to explain to you. Thus, in the instant case after the completion of statutory audit, if a fraud has been detected, the same itself cannot mean that auditor did not perform the duty properly. If the auditor can prove with the help of his documentation papers that he has followed the procedures, then he cannot be responsible. Otherwise, if he cannot prove, then he would be responsible. So guys, this is also very important. So clear is the matter, is the question, is the issue, guys, crystal clear to you? Please let me know. Yes, Priyanka, we are receiving all the queries and all the answers. It might not be possible to speak aloud every name, Priyanka. You had written audit documents and audit evidence. So the correct term here would be, what I was asking is audit documentation. So the term is not documents. And one more thing, students, you have to remember that all the working papers of the auditor are audit documentation. So when you are writing, you have to write the correct term, audit documents. Say if you write in the paper audit documents, the examiner is going to make a round and he is not going to give you credit. So the correct term is audit documentation. So जब आप लिख रहे हैं प्रियंका, तो हाथों पे थोड़ा सा अपना कंट्रोल रखें. Okay, if you make a habit of writing correct words now, then it would continue till your exams. So clear, it's all clear to you guys? Should we move further? Yes, now fraud risk factors and possibility of fraud. Fraud risk factors and possibility of fraud. Now here essay 240 explain, guys, some fraud risk factors. So what are fraud risk factors? Fraud risk factors are those factors which increase the possibility of fraud, which increase the chances of fraud happening. Okay. So these are fraud risk factor. Now essay 240 details many fraud risk factors. So these are general things you can also study, but we will also discuss these factors. Now fraud risk factors relating to financial reporting, fraudulent financial reporting under the category of incentives and pressures. Say like there is high degree of competition in the market and declining margins. Market में बहुत इंडस्ट्री है, सेम प्रोडक्ट बना रही है और मार्जिन कॉन्टिन्यूसली रिड्यूस हो रहा है. Obviously, when there is a great competition and market is saturated and profits are going down year by year, so कंपनी ने हो सकता है बैंकों से पैसा उठा रखा हो, लोन ले रखा हो. So if they show lower sales, then their credit facilities might not be renewed. Okay, so there may be pressure upon them or incentive upon them to boost up their sales artificially, and they might be indulging in frauds. They might be indulging in fraudulent financial reporting this way. Similarly, these are all examples. So just to make you understand, the purpose of it is just to make you understand that these risk factors exist, that wherever these factors exist, the chances of fraud are greater. Okay. So high vulnerability to rapid changes in the such as technology, product obsolescence. Say if a product is getting obsolete very rapidly, okay, it is out of the market quickly, or technology changes quickly. Okay, so obviously there is it is a fraud risk factors. Declines in customer demand, operating losses. So किसी बिजनेस में लॉसेस हुए जा रहे हैं, year after year there are operating losses due to operation. There is a gross or net loss. Okay, so recurring negative cash flows negative चल रहे हैं. एक तो है कंपनी में लॉस होने की बात, that the company is showing a final loss figure. एक है कैश फ्लोज ही नेगेटिव है, कैश फ्लोज ही नेगेटिव है, yet that even if you add back the depreciation, even then the cash flows are negative. So how the company in such a case would be able to meet its repayment obligations? अगर कंपनी के कैश फ्लोज ही नेगेटिव होंगे तो वो अपनी रिपेमेंट ऑब्लिगेशंस कैसे मीट आउट करेगी स्टूडेंट्स? यस प्रियंका, क्लोथिंग इज fashion are highly vulnerable to changes. Yes, new accounting and statutory requirements. कोई नई लीगल रिक्वायरमेंट्स आ गई हैं तो उससे बचने के लिए द कंपनीज माइट इंडल्ज इन फ्रॉड. ओके, होस्टाइल, यू आर आस्किंग होस्टाइल. मितीश भाई पटेल, यू आर आस्किंग होस्टाइल. होस्टाइल मीन्स hostile environment which is not friendly, like operating losses, making the threat of bankruptcy, foreclosure or hostile takeover. कोई अगर टेक ओवर होगा, किसी कंपनी को कोई दूसरी कंपनी ले लेती है तो वो फ्रेंडली टेक ओवर तो नहीं होगा, हॉस्टाइल ही होगा ना. मार्केट में दोनों की आपस में राइवलरी है. ओके, लाइक वी से this is our friendly neighbor, this is hostile. Okay, opportunities. So under the opportunities, related party transactions which are not in the ordinary course of business. So अगर related party transactions होंगी तो उसमें ज्यादा opportunity है fraud करने की. Management might be involved, they might inflate the prices, or the goods might not actually move, but sales may be shown to have been conducted with related parties. Okay, a strong financial presence or ability to dominate a certain industry sector that allows the company to dictate terms to suppliers may result in, अगर किसी की मोनोपोली है, स्ट्रॉन्ग फाइनेंशियल प्रेजेंस है तो वो कई बार मैनिपुलेट कर सकता है. एंड सिग्निफिकेंट अनयूजुअल कॉम्प्लेक्स ट्रांजैक्शंस, especially those close to period end that pose difficult substance over form question. Now what is substance over form? This is an accounting concept. Substance of over form you have read You have read, guys, in your accounts. What is important? Substance, real thing, or the form, or the way in how it is presented? Which thing is more important in accountancy? Whether it transaction when it is recorded in books of accounts, the manner in which it is recorded is important, or the net effect of it, or the what it tends to convey. So substance over form. So in complex transactions, there might be uh, issue of substance over form. So you have to understand that substance, the core thing, that is more important than what is merely its outlook, then what is its mere form. Okay. सो एटीट्यूड रैशनलाइजेशन, वो इसके बारे में जिसकी कुछ लोग ही ऐसे हैं, लोग ही कुछ ऐसे हैं, पीपल हैव सच काइंड ऑफ एटीट्यूड दैट दे विल नॉट चेंज, दे विल से हम तो ऐसे ही हैं. लाइक देयर आर पीपल हु आर नोन वायलेटर्स ऑफ सेबी. अगर किसी कंपनी के प्रमोटर्स हैं जो कि पहले 2 कंपनी बनाई, सेबी के लॉज वायलेट किए, फिर एक कंपनी बनाई, फिर कुछ फ्रॉड किया, तो दे आर नोन वॉलेटर्स, दे आर नोन वॉलेटर्स. या एक बैंक से पैसा लिया, उसको छोड़ा, दूसरे बैंक में चले गए, तब तक दूसरा बैंक प्रॉपर्टी ऑक्शन करवाएगा, इतनी देर में तीसरे बैंक से ले लिया कुछ फ्रॉड करके. सो दीज आर पीपल हु आर नोन वॉलेटर्स. ओके. एक्सेसिव इंटरेस्ट ऑफ मैनेजमेंट. सो मैनेजमेंट का एटीट्यूड ही ऐसा है कि अपनी जैसे शेयर प्राइस को मैनिपुलेट करना या ज्यादा इनकम दिखाना. ओके. बिकॉज दे हैव सच एन एटीट्यूड ऑफ मैनिपुलेटिंग द थिंग्स. और मैनेजमेंट डज नॉट रेमेडी डेफिशिएंसी इन इंटरनल कंट्रोल ऑन टाइमली बेसिस. नाउ दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट. से इंटरनल कंट्रोल में डेफिशिएंसीज है, बट मैनेजमेंट डजंट टेक केयर टू रिमूव दोज डेफिशिएंसीज. व्हाट डज इट मीन? It means that management is not interested in running its business in proper manner, because management also has a chalta hai attitude. Okay. They are not interested that their financial statements are free from errors or frauds. Okay. Yes, many companies fall in this category. So the owner manager makes no distinction between personal and business transactions. Like we have seen that personal expenses are also booked in the name of the company. Okay, so how appropriate picture, how fair picture of the state of affairs of the company or the organization would be represented. So these kind of factors are there. You can go through these. These are general things. And factors relating to misappropriation of assets, incentives, like known or anticipated future employee layoffs. किसी एम्प्लॉय की कंपनी एज ए पॉलिसी की, हाँ भाई इस एम्प्लॉय की छुट्टी करनी है, इसको बाहर निकालना है. ओके. सो अगर किसी एम्प्लॉय को पता है कि 6 महीने 1 साल में ही इज गोइंग टू बी किक्ड आउट, तो his incentive to increase fraud is increased, because he knows that he is not going to remain in the company. So he might feel the incentive to make a quick buck. Okay. Similarly, opportunities. What are the examples of opportunities? Say if large amount of cash is dealt by some person, if some person is dealing with large amount of cash, then sometimes he thinks that opportunity arises, that I am not, that the owner is not taking account of the cash every day. He asks me to give the account of the cash after 2 months. Say, Okay. Or the person who is verifying the cash, he does it for 2 months. So he says इसमें से थोड़ा सा say small amount I use it for my personal purpose, and when some cash would come, then I will give a proper account of it. Okay, so in this way, the fact that he is dealing with the huge amount of cash, it creates an opportunity for him. It creates an opportunity for him. Okay. So inventory assets that are small in size, so these can be misappropriated or in high demand, like I have given you example of jewelry. It is a valuable item. Okay. Convertible assets. So these are just for making you understand. For example, misappropriation of assets may occur because there is the duties of the employees are not divided properly. These are not segregated properly. So some employees have no check upon them, and they might misappropriate some assets of the smaller value. Okay. Inadequate oversight of senior management expenditures. Like senior management में है वो they are booking fake travel bills and other reimbursements claiming from the company. There is no proper internal control procedure. There is no proper tab on them कि आप किसके लिए गए थे, किस काम के लिए गए थे, आपने वहां खर्चा कैसे किया, what was your objective, वो and who sent you, who authorized you, what was the nature of work you performed. He might have gone to say the company is based in Delhi and he might have gone to Chennai for some personal work, or he had mixed up both the things. So these kind of things. Inadequate record keeping with respect to assets, lack of authorization and approval of transactions. So such things are covered here. Similarly, attitudes and rationalization, also some examples are given. Now, circumstances relating to possibility of fraud. Okay, this also gives you some examples. Now, there are discrepancies in accounting records, like we had earlier done last minute adjustments, like at the end of year some journal entries are passed, like credit notes. Okay. Or transactions which are not recorded in a timely manner. आपने कोई transaction record ही नहीं की which was required to be recorded. Okay. So these kind of things, conflicting or missing evidence, like missing documents. There is some cutting on documents, altering. These appear to be altered on the face of it. Or there are unexplained items. Suppose कोई suspense में entries खड़ी हैं काफी time से, but these are not reconciled. कि इनकी nature क्या है, वो पता ही नहीं चल रहा कि पेमेंट किसको दी है. सपोज सस्पेंस डेबिट में है तो पता ही नहीं चल रहा पेमेंट किसको दी है. सो obviously if this is missing evidence, so if it is not properly reconciled, then there is a possibility of fraud. Unusual discrepancies between entities records and confirmation replies. आपने एक्सटर्नल कंफर्मेशन करवाई ऑडिटर ने, और जो एंटिटी के कंपनी के रिकॉर्ड में जो बैलेंस है उसमें सब्सटेंशियल वेरिएशन है और उसकी कोई प्रॉपर एक्सप्लेनेशन नहीं है, it is not reconciled, then it is a conflicting evidence that company's books are saying something and the external confirmation is saying something. Unless there is a proper reconciliation, unless there is a satisfactory reconciliation. So it means that some fishy is happening. Okay. So missing large number of credit entries made to account receivable records. So some journal entries have been made in debtors, not by which are there not by means of payments. Okay, money has not actually come, but there are some credit entries, some adjustments. So what is the nature of these adjustments? This would have to be seen to rule out the possibility of fraud. So another thing is problematic or unusual relationship between the auditor. Say if the auditor or management के बीच में relationship ठीक नहीं है. If the auditor, if the management is not cooperating with the auditor, they are not giving him the full information. Okay. And or they are delaying the information. So what does this show? That management is not cooperating. They are reluctant. They are not willing to give complete information to the auditor कि auditor को कुछ पता ना चल जाए. Okay. So what do all these things point to? What do all these things indicate? These might indicate possibilities of fraud. And companies do such things. Companies do such things. There are many cases. There are examples where companies delay in giving information to the auditors. They adopt all kind of tactics to delay giving information, to delay giving documents to the auditor. Okay. And some other factors which are too general. Okay. And next topic is fraud reporting, which will be taken up in day after tomorrow. So we'll be doing some questions. So are you ready for some correct incorrect type of questions? Yes, guys. Are you ready? Are you ready for correct incorrect type of questions? Yes, guys. Are you able to see the screen? Yes, what should be the answer of question number 1? Let me know, guys. Teaming and leading is a method of suppressing cash payments. Is the statement correct? Without seeing your module, guys. Without seeing your module, guys, answer these questions. Teaming and leading is a method of suppressing cash payments. What should be the answer? Now, few of you have answered. Yashaswini, Murtaza, Alok, Abdul, Sujal Negi, Jyoti Jha, Swati, Priyanka. Now, students, you are writing, most of you are writing it as a true. But tell me how it is true. This is false. This is incorrect. Teaming and leading is a method of suppressing not cash payments, but of cash receipts. Teaming and leading, students, वही मेथड है जिसमें कैश एक कस्टमर से आया और उसकी रिकॉर्डिंग डिले कर दी. ठीक है, किसी और कस्टमर से आया हुआ कैश उसमें पोस्ट कर दिया, और ये साइकिल ऐसे चलता है. सो ये कैश रिसीट्स को सप्रेस, कैश रिसीट्स को डेफर करने का, कैश रिसीट्स को दबाने का मेथड है, ना कि कैश पेमेंट को. सो हाउ यू आर राइटिंग कैश पेमेंट? इट इज ट्रू. टेल मी. मुर्तजा, How you are writing? And Anish Oja, you are also writing. It is not a method of suppressing cash payment. It is a method of suppressing cash receipts. Yes, Dinesh and Geet. It is a method of suppressing cash receipts, not cash payments. Clear, guys? Is that clear? Teaming and leading is clear to you guys. You have to remember it. This question has come many times in the exams. That teaming and leading is a method of suppressing cash payments or cash receipts. You have to write whether it is correct or incorrect. So it is important. Number 2, primary duty of an auditor of a company, it is a typing mistake here, of a company is to detect frauds. What is the primary duty of an auditor of a company? Is it to detect fraud? Whether this statement is correct or incorrect. The primary duty of an auditor of a company is to detect frauds. Yeah, this most of you have answered right. It is also incorrect. It is also false. Swati Bhatti, you are how you are writing it is correct. It is the primary duty of management. It is the primary duty of management to detect frauds. It is not the duty of auditor. His duty is to express an opinion. Kanaya Singh, yes, you are writing it correctly. So while answering students, you have to read between the lines. Keep patience. Study the statement. Study the question with all aspects in your mind, and then try to answer. Do not jump. Do not rush. Okay. Yes, Dinyansh, you have also written correctly. Primary duty is of management. It is not of the auditor. So this statement is also incorrect. This statement is also false. Now third, risk. Now read this statement carefully. Risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from employee fraud is greater than for management fraud. Number 3, the chances that a misstatement due to employee fraud will not be detected is greater than management fraud. Which possibility is greater? Yes, only few males have come. Siva, Shankar, Narayanan, Abdul, Kanaya, Anish, Pranav, Vasishtha, Murtaza, Harshita. What about others? Yes, guys. Risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from employee fraud is greater than for management fraud. This statement is incorrect. Reverse is true. The chances of not detecting a material misstatement from management fraud is greater than for employee fraud, because it would be difficult to detect management fraud. So as Siva Shankar, how you are writing it is correct. So first try to understand the meaning, what the statement is trying to convey, what is its import, what is it trying to convey. Do not just go by just a cursory look. Number 4, high degree of competition in the industry accompanied by declining margin is an example of fraud risk factor. Is a fraud risk factor. क्या ये fraud risk factor का example है? Whether अगर इस टाइप की सिचुएशन होगी तो fraud का चांस ज्यादा है. Whether it is a risk of fraud. True or false? Only one mail has come. High degree of competition in the industry accompanied by declining margins is an example of fraud risk factor. Yes, one mail has come. What about other guys? Yes. Now, all of you have answered correctly. Yes, it is correct. Because it pressurizes management. Okay. It puts pressure on the management to show performance. Okay. So it is a fraud risk factor. It is a fraud risk factor. Number 5. Although auditor may identify the occurrence of fraud, he does not make legal determinations of whether fraud has actually occurred. Tell me whether this is correct or incorrect. Whether this is correct or incorrect. Question number 5. Although auditor may identify occurrence of fraud, but he does not make legal determinations of whether fraud has actually occurred or not. Whether fraud has actually occurred. Only 3 mails. Harini, Abdul, Jyoti. Yes, guys. Does auditor legally determine whether fraud has occurred? Is he capable of determining legally within the contours of law that fraud has occurred? Yes, this statement is also correct. The auditor is in a position to identify the occurrence of fraud, but he does not in any way make legal determination whether fraud has occurred. This I told you that it is a process to be carried out by investigators and to be judged by the courts, to be decided by the courts. Okay, that whether fraud has actually occurred, because fraud is also an offense. It is a criminal offense. Okay. So is that clear to you guys? Yes, guys. So today we have discussed the broad meaning of fraud. I hope, guys, you have understood the true meaning and the nature and import of this term. And we have also understood the 2 reasons why fraud should be occurring. One thing is due to fraudulent financial reporting, and another thing is due to misappropriation of assets. And misappropriation of assets is further divided into misappropriation of goods and defalcation of cash. And guys, we have also understood very clearly that primary responsibility for prevention and detection of error and frauds lies with management. It is not auditor's primary duty. He carries out the audit, he performs the procedures, and while performing the procedures, it is quite possible that he is performing his job in accordance with standards on auditing. He is carrying out the engagement in accordance with standards on auditing. He might dig out the fraud. Okay, because standards provide designing of such kind of procedures which help in unearthing, in uncovering material misstatements. But primarily, he is not responsible. So, in case some fraud is discovered after accounts are audited, then he would have to demonstrate by means of his working papers, by means of audit documentation, that audit was planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing. If he is not able to demonstrate, then he will be liable. So here lies the importance of audit documentation. Okay, if he is not able to demonstrate, then he will be liable for not performing the audit in accordance with standards on auditing. He will be liable for negligence. He will be liable for not carrying out the audit with due professional competence by employing care and skill. Okay, so are all things clear to you? So are all things clear to you guys? So I tried to explain the things in simple terms in your language, okay, to the extent possible. So I hope it is fruitful to you, it is beneficial to you, and it helps you in your preparation. Okay, guys. So good night. Good night to all of you. See you day after tomorrow. Okay, guys. It's over for today. Thank you. Session over.